Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making this fun watermelon tumbler with a drip and sprinklers. So be sure to like, subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump right in. I'm starting with a prepped and spray painted tumbler. I used Restolium white for the base. And then I'm going to go in a swirl pattern with bright neon and green and pink. And as you can see here, I'm just lightly spritzing in bursts and twisting my tumbler around to create this swirl effect. I want to make sure that I get good coverage for all three of these colors because they are going to be a very big part of our design. So keep in mind that you are going to want to spray light so that way you don't get any drips. So if you need to come back until you're happy with your ombre, please let it dry and do so. From here, we are going to apply our glitter. I prefer using the epoxy method, but you can use any adhesive that you prefer. The glitters I'm going to be using today are Granny and Slimed from Maestro's Creations. Those are going to be our greens. Veil and Chantilly from Peachy Olive Glitters. Those are going to be our whites. And Cool Mom and Regina George, which are going to be our pinks. So what I'm doing here is I am putting a very, very small amount, probably less than 2 millimeters on this 30-ounce tumbler of epoxy. I am going to start by going in and creating the base for my ombre. I always like to start with my darkest colors because I don't want them falling into my lighter ones and messing up the design. So I'm going to go in with Cool Mom, followed by Regina George for the pink. And then we're going to go in with Veil and then Granny. These are all my chunkier cuts, and we're just very lightly doing this throughout the entire cup to roadmap our ombres out. From there, I'm going to go in with the matching finer cuts to fill in any extra spaces. And I'm going to continue to go back and forth until I am happy with the coverage as well as the blend between all three of these colors. I'm also going to be using Cool Mom and Regina George on the bottom of my cup, but you guys can choose to use whichever color you would like, whether it's your green or your white. It really is personal preference. Once our glitter is on, I am going to go in with 2 coats of my epoxy. The epoxy that I'm using for this particular tumbler is from the epoxy resin store. It is a great, great epoxy. I'm going to be putting 30 mLs for each coat on the tumbler, and then I am going to be using my kitchen torch and popping any bubbles I may have. From here, I am going to get my hand sander. You can use a block or a paper sandpaper. I'm using 120 grit, and I'm just going all the way around the entire surface of the tumbler, being very careful around my edges because if you take this hand sander around the edges, you risk removing your glitter and your spray paint. Then I'm going to go ahead and clean up the rim of my cup using my Dremel. That's my favorite way to clean up my rim. But you can also use a sanding block or sandpaper to expose that thin line of stainless steel. I am taking this down a little bit further because we are going to be putting a drip. So I want to make sure that everything is secure. From here, I'm going to be getting ready to apply my watermelon seeds. I'm using my Creative Fabrica account. I will make sure to post that link below. And I simply just searched watermelon seeds. From there, I downloaded it, went to my files, found the file for the watermelon seeds, and uploaded that into my Cricut. I then sized it based on my tumbler, and the surface area that I wanted to cover. So that will vary depending upon the size and surface that you are trying to cover. Once that is all done, we're going to sort it onto our mat and very simply put it into our cutting machine and get those cutted out. Once they have finished cutting, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the weeding process and applying it to my tumbler. I use this black permanent vinyl from Cricut. It was super simple to weed, as well as my Cricut transfer tape. The Cricut transfer tape is not my favorite, but it got the job done and I didn't want to waste it. So here you'll see I am simply just taking certain just large groups of seeds from what I had cut out. One thing that I would say is I was placing a lot of these seeds rather high, which I did end up going back off camera and moving quite a few of them down lower just because the drip was going to cover them. So I could use those decal seeds in better spots. But I just did this until I finished with all of the seeds. From there, I went in with another coat of epoxy. I always like to do a thin coat of epoxy. This I use 30 mLs again, but I like going in with a thin coat of epoxy before I apply my drip. That way, if anything goes wrong, it's quick and easy to clean up, and we're not having to fuss so much with that. But I also used this time to add our Milky Way effect on the green. So I added some white acrylic paint to the rest of my epoxy. And you'll see here that I mixed that in after I had fully mixed my epoxy. And I used my stainless steel mixer and just applied it in and then rubbed my finger over them just to flatten out and create the effect I want. Now let's move into our drip. So I am using a fast set epoxy. There's a lot of debate on this. I personally have not run into flash curing, but I put some neon pink acrylic paint and some magenta señorita pinata alcohol ink to get the color that I was looking for, and some Regina George from Peachy Olive Glitters to get that little extra sparkle, because you know me, love me some glitter. From there, I went in and used my epoxy thickener. I have that linked below. And I added that 2 popsicle sticks at a time until I got the thickness that I want. A big part of the way I test that is you'll see that I will bring my epoxy and scrape it off on the side of the cup that I am mixing it in. This is just so I can see how quickly the epoxy is going to drip down, and I continue to add until I have the desired consistency for the drip that I want. I'm also going to be adding some sprinkles to this drip. I found these sprinkles on Amazon. I will do my best to track them down and link them below, but they had little fruits in them, so I went and picked out all of the watermelons that I could find, as well as some coordinating just regular sprinkles. So I picked pink, green, and white because I felt like those colors matched this tumbler the very, very best. And so I was able to add those on once my epoxy had some time to start to cure up a little bit, but still was tacky. Now, for the drip, again, the consistency that you are going to want, that varies, and it really is personal preference. I like mine a little bit thicker. That way I'm not having to babysit so much. But what I do from there, once it's the thickness that I want, I will take my stir stick and I very, very carefully add it to the top rim of my tumbler. If I see natural drips happening, or maybe I want a space where a drip can go, I'll add a little bit more epoxy. That way I really control how my drips are looking. From here, I allow this to sit and just drip. I did have to turn this one upside down a few times, but what I did was I just set a timer on my watch for every 5 minutes and went back and checked. And then I added my sprinkles once it was tacky. And you'll have to forgive me, I did not film that part. Then I went in with one more final layer of epoxy. I popped my bubbles with my torch. And you guys, I absolutely am obsessed with how this tumbler came out. It is so, so cute. It is available in my Etsy shop for purchase. So head on over there if this cup screams for you. But thank you so much for watching. If you decide to duplicate this, please tag me. I love to see what you do. And don't forget to follow us on social. Until next time.